Hey there friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing well. For today's project, I wanted to use the new Cactus on Plaid printable from my shop. And because I love so many of the images on this collage sheet, I wanted to create a folio so that I could incorporate one as a focal image and then some additional ones inside to act as a tip-in. So I'm just pairing some beautiful papers from my stash. This is a really great stash buster, and this slimline profile allows me to create a base with some really fun flip pages. And I think I've got the easiest way to do that and incorporate some of the more interactive style pages, which makes them really fun. Very hard to photograph though, but they're really fun to make. So let's just take a look on the inside of this. It kind of looks like a folio that I would make. I have all of my usual finishing details, but on the inside is where I have all of these fun interactive elements. So I mentioned those images from the printable. They're acting as tip-ins here. I have 4, and then these are partial page tip-ins. As we work along, I'm combining beautiful botanicals with some geometrics, and then we have this side will flip, and then this side will flip open as well. Look how much space you're going to have to finish with your pictures and journaling. This is really chock full of real estate, and it's so easy. So if you're interested in seeing how I created this split flip page folio, then stick with me and we'll make it together. For my project today, we're going to be using this Cactus on Plaid printable from my shop. It's just so happy and cheerful and bright. I have 8 images here on this printable, and for today we're going to be using 5. One will be the focal image, and then the other 4 we're going to utilize as tip-ins. And I just think this is a great way to stretch some extra use out of a collection from your stash, such as this one. I have already gone through the cut apart images that I liked, but I still had paper left, and so I chose this kind of more green and natural collection to go with my cacti. And I also incorporated a few other pieces from other collections just to make sure that I had a nice variety for all of those flips. For the base, we're going to be utilizing all 65-pound weight paper, and for this portion of the tutorial we'll use white, but you'll see when we get to the finished project that we're going to switch to a green. It's still that nice thick cardstock, and I can recommend either way. If you want to add an additional layer of colorful cardstock to the white, you will have plenty of space in this folio. And so my first piece is going to be 8 high by 8.5 wide. I'm scoring it at 4 and also 4.5. So we're gonna wind up with an 8 by 4 profile. I think this is really ideal for working through your 12 by 12 papers because you're going to get a lot of use without creating additional offcuts. And that is very important when you're trying to bust through your stash. So this needs a little bit of reinforcing on the front and back cover. And you also want to have a nice finished edge here. And so I have an additional 2 pieces for this portion. They're 8 by 8, scored at 4, and then we're going to wrap that front and back cover. So as I do, I am using my 2 glue combo, and I'm just going to add that combo here, keeping it in from the edge so it doesn't squish out. And then I'm going to bring this to that score line just so I make sure to get everything lined up perfectly. I'll come in to the corner right where that score line is and then position it along the crease and the bottom just to make sure that it stays nice and square. So now I can come back in and pull the remainder of the backing off of my double-sided tape. This is a good way to keep it from sticking to things that you're not ready to stick them to at the moment. And I think the hardest part of this really is trying to keep your hands out of the glue, which we all know is not going to happen in my case, but I have hope for you to be more successful at that. And so this is just going to be a way to thicken that cover and to give it a finished edge. So I'm going to repeat that process that we just did for the other side, and then that will be the outside of our cover all ready to start filling in. So let's go ahead and do the other side now. Okay, perfect. Now we have the front and the back cover reinforced with those additional added layers. So there are two more pieces that come in now, and they are both going to be 8 by 8, and we're sticking with that 65-pound weight cardstock. So 8 high by 8 wide. I scored it at 4, and then I brought it to my guillotine cutter and then lined it up at 4 and cut until it reached the part that intersects with that score line. So I've essentially divided that top portion exactly into half. So rather than having a 4 by 8, we have two 4 by 4s. So as I mentioned, I do have 2 of these, and I'm going to place one on either side. I want the flaps to open outward, so I'm going to position these with that score line along the outside, and I'll continue to use those 2 glues, especially on these layers where there is a lot of movement and interaction with the page. So let's go ahead and add this now. And like I mentioned, the hardest part is keeping your hands out of the glue, but it's very important to line that up along that score line so you don't interfere with that folding properly. So let's go ahead and get that adhered, and you can see how these will open independently of each other. And so let's just repeat that process for this side as well. Okay, so now we have both of these front and back covers finished with their split pages. Let's bring an additional element in, and so I want to have some more flips as we work along. I have prepared these 4 by 8 pieces. They're scored at 4, and I put my double-sided adhesive on there, and we're going to line these up on these split pages so that we get 2 bits of interaction for each page that we open. And so this is going to be a lot of fun to fill in with my pattern papers. It will be not so much fun to get photographs of all of these interactive pieces, but I think it will be a great way to utilize those stash papers, and you can easily adjust the color of the base to whatever theme that you like. And this is a nice way to also utilize larger pictures. So these are going to be 4 by 4 pages. You'll get a nice size image if you want to finish this as a regular scrapbook. So once again, I want these to open outward or inward toward the middle. So I'm going to line up my score into the middle. I think the most important part that you don't overlap is that crease, is that section here, so that you can continue to move these pages independently without them getting caught on the next layer. So let's just line that up from this angle so that I know I've got it exactly into position. So now it goes that way, and then it also goes that way. So I'm just going to continue on and repeat that process till I have all of these covered, and then we can get on to finishing it with the pattern paper. Okay, so now we've got all of those fun flips done, and what you did not see is me off camera having to wash my hands off from the glue with some carpet cleaner because that's all that I had handy. So this is where we're gonna leave this particular base. I'm gonna revisit this in a future video and do some additional variations so that you can see that it's pretty versatile. And then we're gonna switch to the one that I have prepared. And remember, we're using a green cardstock for that because it coordinates better with the collection. As I mentioned, we're going to be using 4 of those images from the Printable as tip-ins on the inside of this flip book. And so I have printed my images, and then because this is printer paper, I did want to finish that edge. So I just ran my marker all around with the coordinating color so that it would look like a finished edge. And then once I'd established the placement of each of these images, I am going to add my double-sided tape to the side where I want that flip to open. And so I have a piece of the offcut of the green paper, and I have it cut to be 2 inches wide and scored at 1. So this is basically going to be our hinge mechanism. And I want to take my image and line this up just along the bottom here on the edge where that score is. So it's right along that edge. Then I can come in and clip off the excess. And now I have a perfectly sized hinge. All I have to do is come back in and finish the back. And so I'm going to choose a very neutral, non-contrasting pattern for this. You can utilize the back of the tip-ins for additional pictures, but it would also be nice to have a place where you can write directly onto the paper. And so that's what I'm going to do with this kind of off-white sort of geometric pattern. This is going to be a really nice way to bulk up the center of it also. And so let's just go ahead and take our tip in here, and I want to line up that score line again with my pattern paper. It's easier to cut around the outside, so we'll just get this lined up and pressed into place. And then I'll come back and just remove the excess. So the last thing I want to do is add one more row of the double-sided tape along here, and these tip-ins will be ready to incorporate into the book. This is another area where you could easily continue to add some detail by putting a little stickles on there. So the base is all set here, and like I mentioned, I switched to that green. And the really nice thing about this is now all of these inside flip pages are going to have the same measurement, so it's really easy to cut all of the supplies you need for this. And so it is going to be 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. And I'm just going to tuck my printable here along that score line and press that into place. And then I'll position it right along here. You're going to get that nice border showing of the green cardstock. And then I will just repeat that process. Okay, so this is what you see when you open this folio. You're going to have your tip-ins here with the images, and then we also have those first flips. And so I have decided to match the papers for these. You don't have to, you can mix and match if you're going through your stash. I just like to coordinate all of the areas that show together if I can. So I'm just switching to this beautiful sort of leaf pattern, and I'm alternating back and forth between the botanical inspired prints and then some geometrics, just to keep it from looking too busy. And I think this will be a really nice way to coordinate with that printable. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in all the rest of these inside page flaps, and then we'll continue to move on to the center. Okay, you can see now that I've got that finished, and we're really building up all these layers of paper. So this is getting super sturdy and nice and thick. So we've got our botanical kind of leaf patterns on the inside here, and then also here. Now we can flip these out and see how we can finish the inside. So look how much extra room you're going to get for finishing this. And I know this is not all going to stay in frame, but I want to continue my theme of incorporating the botanical prints or the leaf prints with the geometric. So we're going to do that for this layer. For our square portions, I'm going to choose a pattern that has a little bit of a darker background, and that is another good way to keep layered patterns from looking busy, is to change the scale or the background color, the contrast, so that it's a definite layering pattern instead of everything getting all jumbled up together. And this is, like I said, another good way to stretch your scraps into a full folio. So let's just continue to work along. Here is the last piece for this side. When we move to these center sections, this is the only time our measurement will change. So we're going to continue to have this being 3 7/8 inch wide, but now it's 7 7/8. And I just think this is a really sweet kind of geometric, but also a floral, and the lighter background helps it to keep it from looking busy. So let's finish that with this one here as well. If you wanted to, you could add a section for the spine, but it's kind of a small little sliver, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Okay, so here is the center. We've got our flips going this way. We've got our tip-ins, and then we've got our additional patterns on the back side of these flips. So let's go ahead and work on finishing the outside now. Here's a layer of that beautiful leaf pattern to cover the back. And this is the same measurement as was the full-size pages on the inside. And I want to incorporate some ribbon trim for a closure. So I just picked this beautiful lime juiced stitched satin from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I've got enough to tie a generous sized bow. I'm tacking that into place temporarily so that it will stay where I want while I add the next layer. So here is my front cover, and this is just a combination of 2 of those patterns from the inside, and I layered them so that I can get a little extra detail. I do have a doily, and this is just cut from a Recollections die. I don't know if it's still available. I found mine on Amazon, but any die that is 4 inches or less will work well. You don't want one to hang over the edge so that it becomes fragile when you open and close your folio. And so here is that image for the cover, I did use my stickle to add a little detail here and my marker to finish the edge. I also added it to a piece of extra thick cardstock so that it would be very sturdy, and then I added a piece of foam to the back so that I can build some dimension, and this is going pretty much right in the middle. Because this is a sort of slimline profile, I want to incorporate 2 flower arrangements just to fill in that space. So I have created identical ones here. I start with my Lotus flower. These are from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I've altered these by switching out the center to something that would coordinate better with my Cactus theme. And I also created an additional layering pattern with a very pretty sage green. It's sort of similar to my trim. I did add die cut leaves, some netting, and some loopy twine bows, and then more of that beautiful lime juice stitch satin. And I want to position these so that the leaves are going in opposite directions, and so that will sort of help to balance the cover. These are pretty heavy, so I'm going to stick with hot glue to add those on. I do have a couple of charms here, little cactus charms, and I tied them as I would typically for adding them with a button, but because my folio is kind of narrow and I want to make sure not to cover up too much of the background layers, I'm going to position my string up underneath the petal of this flower. So rather than going with a button to cover the cut ends, I'll just kind of disguise it underneath those petals. So now that I have it positioned exactly where I want, I'm adding a generous amount of hot glue, and then I'll stretch that string up into it. And these are going to be positioned exactly where I want them. And I'll just come in and remove the excess string there and add an additional amount of glue to these petals so I know they're going to stick down and cover that string well. The final little detail I want to incorporate is some of these pretty little sequins, and I've just picked out a nice neutral color. I'll put 3 here, 1 on top of the image, and then 2 further down on the base so that I get a nice layered look. I like to add these with my Tombow. So that's going to be all for my split page flip book using the Cactus on Plaid printable from my shop. If you're interested in checking that out, I will link it in the description below, as well as all of our social media sites. If you're not already, I would love for you to join my crafty little family by hitting that subscribe button. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!